done for. We sign on.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Edwards. Welcome to the first Sign On Your Views programme, a programme where we will look in depth at issues hopefully raised by you and give you the opportunity to have your say. Hi, I'm June Hippolyte. And as we said in our first programme and in our supplement in the British Deaf News, we want you to tell us how you feel about the world you live in. The pressures, frustrations and anger. You can do this by sending us a video letter, writing to us or sending us a coupon from our supplement. Also, I'm delighted that we have the opportunity to use the Right to Reply bus with its own mobile studio to record your views. More about that later. Now I'm going to ask you a question. How would you feel if you belonged to a minority section of the community? That's a silly question. Surely being deaf, we know how it feels. Right, but this was a question sent to us by some deaf people who were concerned about how it felt being a minority within the deaf community. Here's a clip of their video letter.
There are many white deaf clubs out there in the community. What we want is the same for Asian people. Within this large community for black and Asian people, we need to be able to mix and share our culture. We also need to welcome white people in to join us. But it is the Asian people who must be responsible for their own self-determination and future.
Interesting. Which community do they belong to? The Asian with its own cultural identity or the deaf? And what are they missing out on? We asked the first all-deaf production team, Deaf Owl, to take a look at two groups in London who have recently been set up to help deaf Asian people. Both are organised by deaf Asians themselves. There's the Myra Club in Harrow and the Asian Women and Girls Group in Forest Gate, East London. Here's their film. I am a deaf Asian mother. I have 3 children, and I have experienced what Asian culture is like. Others have their own religion, and I have too. That's why I want to set up the Deaf Asian Women and Girls Group. It's to enable them to develop and for their confidence to grow. A lot of deaf Asian girls and women have lost out on their education. There's not enough communication. You know, one girl asked me, what does culture mean? It was very difficult to explain to her just what the word culture does mean.
Come here, you come talk, man. Come here. Come here. No, what did you say?
Here we have activities like sport. There's basketball, badminton, table tennis, sometimes snooker if they want. And for special occasions, we do cooking. Asian food, of course, which we then share. There's lots of activities. The girls and women who come here relax, do what they want to. If they've anything to ask me, they ask. Some Asian girls need help, support, like making phone calls, paperwork with benefits, money problems, anything from A to Z. I really think that it's fantastic for Asian women to come here. And also, it's a support for them. I look at the deaf women, and they never go to deaf clubs, or to discos, or to parties. There's never any of them there. We need to get together. It's only fair, just like the Asian men do, so what about the women? We must be fair. We come here because it's encouraging. It's a step forward. We can forget about home. We mix together here and socialise. I know some mothers and fathers who are very strict and who never let the girls go out, always making them sit back at home with nothing to do. It's really not fair, and we must be fair. Equal opportunities for all.
That's a real eye-opener. Now, Asian deaf people regularly flock to this church every 2 weeks on a Tuesday evening. You may be thinking, that's odd, a church? But it's to go to the Myra Club, which is a club for Asian deaf people. Let's have a look.
Right, everybody? I would like to tell you that in 2 weeks' time, we have Lynn Clark from AIDS Ahead coming here.
The club started in 1988. I went to other clubs to have a look, and it seemed to me that white people were together in groups, and the Asian people seemed to be pushed aside. I thought about this, and it made me want to establish a club for Asian deaf people. All halls are very expensive, but this church hall is very cheap, £3 an hour, and that's fortnightly. They, the members, all live to the north, south, west and east of London, so it's better to have the club fortnightly. It's much too far for some people to come every week.
I think it's interesting to come here, to meet new friends and to chat to each other. It's something different to come to the club and not to be stuck at home bored. People are from different places and have different jobs, and we learn all about each other. I think it's a great way and that the club should carry on going. Oh yes, you're right, you're right.
What do you think of the club here? Is it interesting? Tell me.
Yes, I find it very interesting here because really it's the only opportunity for Asian deaf people to meet, to relax and communicate. And it's good because we have both cultures here, Asian culture and deaf culture, so we can share similar ideas and experiences. Everything's right here. Well, that's something different. We asked Dr. Roxana Meherali, an educational psychologist, why do they need to be seen as a different group?
To survive in a hearing world, deaf people have to learn to juggle with 4 balls: deaf culture, hearing culture, BSL and English. For Asian deaf people, the task is made harder by the addition of at least 2 extra balls to juggle, those of home culture and home language. At the same time, they are also trying to combat negative societal attitudes towards both deafness and blackness. How can they find a clear personal social identity except in the company of others who are trying to perform the same extraordinary feat?
Here in the studio today, we have asked people from both the Asian and Black deaf community to discuss what they feel needs to be done in the future so that deaf people from ethnic minorities can feel comfortable with themselves. With Rachel Bastica is Kavita Kohli, a social worker from Hounslow who has been instrumental in setting up Asian groups. Kevin Buckle, the leader of the London Deaf Black Society, and Chanel Vasant, the reporter in the film you've just seen. Can you tell me, why is it necessary to set up Asian and Black groups? There are many deaf clubs around already, so why do we need more? Right. Asian deaf people can't fit into mainstream hearing groups, or Asian hearing groups, because of the communication difficulties. There's no sign language. And secondly, yes, you're right, there are white deaf clubs. But from my own and other people's experiences, the white deaf groups won't accept or support us. The white deaf people don't realise that they ignore issues about power and oppression that relate to our race and to our culture. And because of these two things, we experience double discrimination. So that's why we have set up these groups.
Yes, I feel it is important to establish Black and Asian groups because we are a minority within very many white people. They don't understand our culture or our identity. That's why we're so unsure. Nothing has happened in the past, which is why we need to be proactive in encouraging the Black deaf community to have confidence to advocate for itself in order to secure the future. I'm concerned that white deaf people could become a problem. They've oppressed us for a long time. We live in Britain. As we respect them, they must respect my culture, who I am and what I am.
Yes, you're right. Identity is very important because within our group we're allowed to express our own identity of race and culture. And we can share experiences as well, feel that we belong there.
It's also important that what we establish encourages access to our culture and heritage, because in the past we've had nothing, nowhere to turn. Now that we've got things going, we know we have the information to express and share. With a common experience, then we really can move forward.
Yes, you're right. And also the group can develop social activities that relate to our culture as well. And we can be involved in setting our own agenda and also be involved in planning and decision making. Yes, it's very important that we have the control. You both say that there's no support from the Asian Black hearing community or from the deaf community, and that's why you've set up your individual groups. So how about the organisations of the deaf, like the BDA, RNID and others, voluntary groups, local authorities? How can they support you in changing attitudes? Yes, it is difficult, because in the past the responses have been very negative, but there does now seem to be a slight change in my experience. Now, the BDA set up the Asian Deaf Youth Project 4 weeks ago in Coventry, and that was to train young Asian deaf people to become leaders themselves and to set up their own groups. Another example last year was the conference in Leeds, and Black and Asian deaf people came in droves to stand up and have their say, saying, look, we're here, what about us and our needs, and what we've got to say. Do you agree?
It's important that we, the deaf, Black and Asian community, establish conferences so we can invite both deaf and hearing people together and give awareness as a lead to them. That way we can change attitudes because there are so many issues that need to be addressed. Things have been completely dominated by hearing people, so we need to make them aware that there have to be attitude changes. Yes, you are absolutely right. Talking about the BDA Asian Youth Project in Coventry, I went there and there were many young people speaking, and the BDA were really concerned about the issues they were raising. Issues regarding their background, hearing people, white oppression, and attitude. We didn't even know what the word meant until then. The fact that there is this BDA service hopefully means there is a good future for employment and Asian groups, and we do want to welcome in white people.
Now, deaf Asian and black people don't seem to get a lot from either their own cultural or deaf communities. So with setting up their own groups, they can absorb their own culture and identity. Do you think that now you'll begin to spread the word about issues relating to your own cultures? I'm sure that there's lots of deaf people who would like to know more. Do you have any plans for workshops, conferences, awareness or cultural days?
In the near future, the youth clubs in my area, Hackney, are bringing together black deaf people through the panel of 4. Now we have Kavita's Asian groups, but what about the black? We have nothing. There needs to be something, as my concern is, if we don't do it now, by the year 2000 we'll be left nowhere. It's important to give access and educate these young people so we can take a back seat and let things really take off. Hearing people are way ahead at the moment. We need to catch up.
In Leicester, we have an Asian deaf women's group with our own agenda. And there we wanted to teach about assertiveness and confidence building, about black and Asian history, and also about equal opportunities, advocacy, and many other things, in the hope that one day they themselves would be able to stand up and say what they wanted to.
In my group of about 13 black deaf people, we aim to develop confidence and give information about black culture. So we're arranging a seminar on July the 11th, and it is important we tell the British Deaf Association, the National Deaf Children's Society, the British Association of the Hard of Hearing, the Royal National Institute for the Deaf, the panel of 4. They have no awareness. We need to get in and educate them. They need to link with us because we're also deaf. In the hearing organisations, we also need to forge links, as our needs are always ignored. We need everyone to be aware. People need to know we are here.
So what are your hopes for the future? Well, for me, my hope is to set up more and more groups nationally, to create a network, and also to promote the values and activities relevant to our culture, to improve services to Asian black deaf people, and to change professional attitudes. That's what I want.
My aim is education, because most of the education in the past was based on white heritage, for example the monarchy. What about black heritage? Surely it is important to have that within the national curriculum for deaf schools in Britain. We have our own wealth of culture that must be included. Our children must have pride in their culture, because either they don't know about it, or what they have been told is different. If they have that knowledge, then it is something they can pass on to future generations. Information must be passed on. Without that link, we have nothing with which to preserve our identity. Yes, education is important. Now, we've talked about the concerns for the year 2000, and what I hope for our Asian and black children is much greater awareness and education. We can educate them by using our own experiences. With this knowledge, they can move forward, establish things. Now, you've talked about education being powerful and valuable, and you previously spoke about raising money, learning from their mothers. So hopefully they will be able to establish their own black clubs, their own Asian clubs, have cultural activities, sports, food, to learn about the Asian languages and languages of the black communities on an equal basis. Black and Asian hearing people have youth and community workers. Perhaps our workers could go and see what they are doing, adapt it for our own needs, and use it within the deaf community. Hopefully that way we'll instigate real progress. We'll have to see.
Well, lots of issues raised, but it seems that we've only just scratched the surface and in no way covered things in depth. I'm sure that they'll go on talking for hours, but it does make you feel that we must be aware of their community within ours, as well as outside it. Later this year, a brand new service will be launched for the deaf and hard of hearing community, but it can be used by the hearing as well. Rachel went to Liverpool to find out more. This building behind me here is where Type Talk is based. But just what is Type Talk? Well, let's suppose that a deaf person with a text phone wishes to contact a hearing person who doesn't have the same equipment. They call to this building, and someone from here will speak to the hearing person on their behalf, then type back the response to the deaf person, thereby the conversation is carried out. The RNID did have a small telephone exchange system, but they recently got together with British Telecom to set up this new 24-hour national telephone relay service.
This is Type Talk. Have you used our service before? Well, this is a relay service for people who are deaf.
Who can use the service? What machines they need and how much will it cost them?
Anyone can use the service who needs to use a text terminal, and that means people who are deaf, deafened, hard of hearing, deaf-blind or speech impaired. Any of those people who have a text terminal can access Type Talk. The kind of machines they use, well, there's a whole variety of them, but they have to operate to a certain standard, which is the modern European standard, and the jargon is that it must be a CCITT at least 300 baud machine. Now that won't mean a lot to the general public, but it will to the people who use these machines. That gives a whole range of machines, including the VersaBraille machine used by deaf-blind people, for example. In terms of what it costs, we have what we call our fair pricing policy, which is that we price the calls just about as though they had been dialed direct. So a call from, say, a deaf person in Glasgow to a hearing person in Glasgow will be charged as a local call, a local Glasgow call, even though it's been trunked all the way down the country to Liverpool, handled by an operator and trunked all the way back up again. So charges are very comparable with hearing people's telephone charges. We have about 70 people on site at the moment, most of whom, of course, are operators, but we are recruiting every month and growing very fast indeed, so we'll have probably a couple of hundred staff on site within a year or two. We're using a lot of very sophisticated equipment, both computing equipment and telephone equipment. For example, we're using the Meridian telephone switch, which ensures that the calls are delivered to the operators in the most efficient possible way. And our target for answering the calls is that we must answer at least 80% of calls within 16 seconds, which is quite a hard target, but we're doing rather better than that at the moment.
Hope that will be acceptable to you.
At last, I can contact my doctor when I need to make an appointment. And if I'm ill, I don't have to crawl to the surgery. When Type Talk goes fully public, they'll be inviting people to join the scheme. The telephone number is 051 494 1000. That's 051 494 1000. Because we've only just started transmission, we haven't yet used the Right to Reply bus, but we have received this video letter. At last, a programme that really is for the deaf. I've watched other so-called deaf programmes, but haven't quite felt that they've got it right. Something's missing. But with your programme, there was an immediate rapport. So if anyone were to say, what's a deaf programme, I would say, this is it. You have the 4 different areas: politics, arts, foreign programmes and Right to Reply. I think they're all good, but for me the foreign programme is important, as we can learn what's going on in different countries, and that means that we can compare it to what we have here. That's Francis Elton's view. Maybe it gives you something to think about. Next week will be the At Leisure programme, which will bring you a what's on in the theatres and in television in the month of May. Also, we look at the Disability Arts in London magazine, and we'll be showing exclusive footage of the European Deaf Ski Championships. Bye-bye.